Well, welcome back. So glad you're joining us again with Talking with Tad. It's such an exciting time. I mean, we are right in the midst of election. We have a very special guest speaker today. But before we get to our judge today, I want to just remind you, as I do every time, we're in election season. And this is the time that you have to go out and vote. Now, maybe some of you have already done that. That's fabulous. And I hope that you're getting other people to go vote. But that doesn't mean you can't share this video. It doesn't mean you can't be at the polls holding a sign up for a judge, for a friend that is running for office, a special person that you know that you want to help support. Doesn't mean you can't make phone calls or still knock on doors. So many things are going on, and we still need you to be engaged, because we've got a couple weeks left till that last day. Now, so we need you to do it. Or if you want to be a poll watcher, just sitting at the polls. Now, it's not just because it is an important job, but that is a job that people that you're there, people say that you're watching, you don't say anything, you don't be the police, you're just watching, and that way people can't cheat. People have to follow the law, and that is what is important. So we still need you. We need you to engage. And now you get the opportunity, as we've shown for the last couple of weeks, we've introduced many of the statewide candidates. Now we get another statewide candidate that is going to share his personal story of how he decided to become an attorney. Why did he decide to run for office? I know a little bit about him, and I think that service heart and that service to our country is so important, but we want to hear it firsthand from Judge Bert Richardson. And we are so excited, Judge, to have you with us today and to be able to share your story of who you are and what developed you and drove you this direction. So, Judge, please tell us who you are.
It's good to be here this morning. I don't know that I really wanted to become a judge at any point in my career. I was fortunate. I went to law school in San Antonio, and I quietly worked at this small airlines called Southwest Airlines at nights while I was in law school. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
And it was a small airlines at the time, and so I would go to school from 8 to 4, and then I would work from 5 to 11, and then go home and sleep and go back to school the next day. And somewhere at the end of my second year, because I was fluent in Spanish, the DA's office needed interns, and they hired them, and it was really a pretty good deal. And they wanted a Spanish speaker, so I applied, and I thought, okay, I'm getting deep into my law school career. It's time to get a law school job instead of an airline job. And so I started working there as an intern. I worked in the felony section. I put together the cases and made the subpoenas, and so I got to see how the system really worked. And when I graduated, I just decided that's what I wanted to do. It was a lot of fun. All of the cases were interesting. I really didn't have any interest in the civil world at all. I just thought that the criminal world was where it was at. And the cases were just, they were like big jigsaw puzzles. You put them together, try to explain to the jury what you're doing. And so I got hired at the DA's office. And I knew from that day that I wanted to be a career prosecutor. And so I knew the next step was to become a federal prosecutor. But I was aware of the fact that that would require several years of experience. And so I kind of set my heart on doing everything I could in the DA's office. I worked in the misdemeanor section, the felony section, the juvenile section. And somewhere along the way, which helped me for this job, I decided I wanted to work in the appellate section. So I became not just a trial lawyer, but an appellate lawyer in the DA's office. And I loved the appellate work. Actually, I loved everything I did. The thing I liked about the appellate work was the intellectual challenge. The thing I liked about the trial work was having one-on-one contact with victims that we represented as the state. And so as I did that, I started teaching at the local colleges. I became board certified in criminal law. And then somewhere along the way, there was an opening at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I applied for it. And how I became a judge, I don't know. It's kind of a funny story because once I got to the U.S. Attorney's Office, I was involved in just a very fascinating case that overlapped with the state and the federal system. And it was something unusual that they had never done. It involved a defendant who was acquitted on a death penalty case at the state level. But when I got to the federal level, I learned, well, if there was a problem with a case and there was still an opening to indict that person federally, we could do that. And they allowed me to do that for the better part of a year while I was there. And then my first foray into politics was about a year into it, where the legislature at that time had created new courts. And so when the legislature creates new courts, I think in Bexar County, they created 5 courts. The governor has the power to appoint. And I was approached by Roy Barrera and several others about applying for that vacancy. And I basically said, look, I love the job I have. It's taken me 7 years to get here. Why would I want to jump into politics? That would mean I would have to run the risk of losing my job. And so I kind of brushed it off, to be honest with you. I really enjoyed that point of my life. When I was at the DA's office, I'd tried several death penalty cases, and it was just kind of like the pinnacle of my prosecutorial career, and I wasn't ready to give it up. So they left me alone for a few weeks, and then they came back and they recruited Pat Hancock, my best friend, to twist my arm. And that got me into the political world. I just said, look, I'll fill out an application, I'll send it, if you just leave me alone, okay? I'll send it up to the governor's office. And before I knew it, I had a call from Pat who said, look, somebody at the governor's office is desperately trying to get in touch with you. They want to talk to you. Would you just give them a call? And so that person was Clay Johnson. And he was Governor Bush's chief of staff.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting story, but he called, I think I was in Sam's or Walmart. So all the intercom was in the background saying, we've got the blue light special. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm talking to somebody in the governor's office. I'm in Sam's. And I will tell you, he could not have been nicer. He was one of the nicest people in public service I've ever met. And he said, look, Bert, I've heard that you've applied. I'm trying to find your application. And I could hear him kind of rifling through the papers on his desk. I said, look, I'm positive I sent it. I was browbeat into sending it to you. I overnighted it. It's got to be there. So while we're talking, he finds it and he goes, okay, I've got it here. He said, when can you come up and visit with me? Will it be like, can you come tomorrow or the next day? And I said, well, I'm going on a 3-week vacation. I haven't been on vacation in about 4 years, and I really can't do that. So he goes, okay, well, how about when you come back? And that's how it started. I checked with my bosses to make sure it would be okay to interview. Kind of have the Hatch Act and the problem of getting involved in politics while you're a federal prosecutor.
Right.
And so I went to DC for 3 weeks, stayed with my relatives, had a great time, and I came back and I interviewed with Clay Johnson.
Wow, that is an incredible story. Well, and a little bit, I mean, I think you come from a family that serves our country, so you had it in your blood that, I mean, you got the excitement and all of the learning experience, but then to be approached and to say yes, because that's a big deal. I mean, running, I mean, what's a campaign like for you? Because, I mean, you were here in Kendall County where I live just this week. And I mean, you go out across the whole state. Then that was just Bexar County, but now, so what's it like running for office?
You know, one of the reasons I decided to at least take the appointment at that point was because Bexar County was fairly neutral in their races against judges. Right. And so it was a safe bet. And Bill Blagg was U.S. attorney, and he goes, look, are you really going to think about turning down an appointment from the governor? You know, this will come along, and if you turn it down, it's not going to happen again. And I talked to my family, and I do come from a long line of public servants. My dad was in the Air Force, all my brothers were, and I gave it a lot of thought. I was most impressed with my interview with Mr. Johnson. He could not have been nicer, and really wasn't even a lawyer. And I kind of reflected on some of the things he had said. And so I took the dive. And you know, when I left, I was kind of hoping they would wait a year. I knew there would be a vacancy a year later. And I thought maybe that'll give me some time to finish the things I'm working on at the U.S. Attorney's Office, which I thought were very important at the time. And I think I got a call like the next day. And you know, my little red light came on the phone. I said, I'm not even going to check my messages till the end of the day. I'm just too nervous about this. I don't have to make this decision. So when I ran in Bexar County, I mean, I ran unopposed in 2000, and I ran unopposed in 2004. But I ran like I had an opponent. I campaigned hard. And then in 2008, I think everybody knows in Bexar County, we had the Obama sweeps, as we call them. Every Republican in Bexar County got beat, and it was like the worst nightmare for me. I woke up the morning after I'd received all the endorsements. I'd campaigned really hard. I actually did TV commercials. And when I got up the next morning, I just realized, look, there's nothing I could have done. Some of the judges that I liked a lot, Joe Brown were defeated. It was just basically a partisan sweep across the county. And then I thought, I wish I had that federal job back, and I wish I could go back. But they had a hiring freeze. So actually, I embarked on maybe the most interesting part of my career that most people don't know about, and that was working as a visiting judge across the state.
Oh.
And if you've been elected twice, most people don't know, but the state has a short list or a long list of visiting judges. There's 11 presiding judges across the state that are regionally based, and they have a list of judges that they call when they need to fill their courts. And so for 6 years, I worked in over 50 counties across the state. Small counties, big counties. Sometimes in 1 week, I would work in 5 counties. I worked in the West Texas county. I call it the Wild Wild West. It actually starts in Bernie and it goes all the way to El Paso, and it includes all of Big Bend. So
that had to have been an incredible experience.
It was just
I didn't realize that you did that for 6 years.
I did.
That's a long time, and that would be one way you would get to meet people across the state.
I did.
Then that goes where does that lead into the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals? Is
yes.
How come that's what was, so how did that transpire?
Well, while I was working across the state, I really liked the work. We called it R&R, rule and run, or just give it to Mikey like the cereal commercial and he'll take it. We got the cases nobody else wanted. And the people were super nice. Like on 1 week, sometimes if I went to West Texas, I would stop in Sonora, do a docket, then same morning I'd go to Ozona, and then I would go to Big Lake, and then I would go to Rankin, and then I would go over to Fort Stockton, and then on the way back from Fort Stockton, I'd go to Sanderson and Del Rio.
Oh
I could do all that in 1 week. And then in 2014, I think, or 2013, 3 of the judges announced that they would not be running again. So I knew Kevin Yeary pretty well, and we talked about it. He worked in the DA's office, and we'd worked together. I didn't know David Newell at the time. And I had a few people approach me about it. And really, it was kind of one of those attitudes of, look, I love what I'm doing. There's a vacancy. A couple of people said, oh, you might not even get an opponent. The Democrats weren't recruiting anybody. And there wasn't anybody on the radar that had thought about running in the primary. So it was like, I have nothing to lose other than the surprise of the job. And I'd done appellate work. I'd done a lot of it. I'd done it as a visiting judge, and I was very comfortable writing. So I just started getting signatures across the state to get on the ballot. And before I knew it, I had a primary opponent from San Angelo, and we still remain good friends. Oh, it was a very professional primary race. And maybe so because I just didn't have any pressure of winning. I was doing what I like to do anyway. I continued to visit. And so I had the primary opponent. Then I got a general election opponent that didn't show up for anything. I mean, he didn't come to any interviews. He was from El Paso. I had an assignment in El Paso presiding over a serial killer case, and I bumped into him and I introduced myself, and he said, well, who are you? And I said, well, I'm your opponent in the general election. I said, well, I see you with some interviews, and he goes, no, I'm not going to any of those. So now it's a whole different ball game. The Democrats are serious about taking these places.
Yeah.
And so we've had to campaign really hard. This week alone, Kevin and David and I have been to 10 cities.
Nice.
And my first casualty of the campaign was a raccoon in the middle of the night coming home from Mason. And part of my car. So,
oh, no.
Anyway, that's kind of how I got to where I am. It was, I feel like along the way, I've just kind of fallen into different positions that were available and taken advantage of the opportunities. And I love what I do. I really do.
And you know what, I can tell that you do. There's no question. And I mean, it sounds like a door opens and you walk through it and you take it. You might have that little bit of hesitancy, but you've taken those opportunities and you've done such an incredible job. I mean, we are very thankful for what you do and your service and running. And I just know that when people hear this story and go, oh, wow, that's incredible, you're going to get so many more votes because they've connected with you. And we really do appreciate that so much. As we start to wrap up our interview here, Judge, what, as our listeners know, there's always a fun fact at the end. And we thought maybe you would share one of these a fun fact that's happened to you in your life with our listeners.
You know, I think most people I work with know I'm an avid photographer. I shoot for several track and field magazines.
Oh.
I've done it for years. I usually keep a low profile about what I do for a job. I don't tell anybody. I've shot everything from the state track meet for the last 30 years to the Olympic trials.
Oh my gosh.
And I had the opportunity to shoot the Olympics this year, but it got canceled.
Oh.
So maybe next year. I'm just reminded of one night, the secret kind of got out with a bunch of track officials, and I walked by and somebody screamed, "Hey, Judge." And I kind of ignored it, and they said, we're talking to you, come back over here. And then they started asking, well, if we get in jail, can you get us out? And what in the world are you doing here taking pictures? And, you know, I just it's a part of my life I've been doing since I was 12 years old. And I'm comfortable at it. It's good therapy for my day job. And quite frankly, it paid for most of my schooling. I worked on publication staffs, and I just didn't want to be a professional photographer, journalist at that point in my life.
Well, that is very impressive. And so that means that maybe next year, because I love track and field. I mean, I used to go to all the track and field at the different cities I've lived in. If the Olympics happen, does that mean I get to see you out there taking those?
Probably won't see me, but I might be there. I'll be at the Olympic trials.
I love that. You know, one day that is on my bucket list, is to go to a Olympics, and I hope that it would be a track and field too. So that's exciting. Well, Judge, thank you so much for coming in and being with us today and sharing your story. And again, I will be out there. We will go out to all of our viewers, all of our contacts, and we hope that they share it on email and also connect on your page and like you and follow you. And we wish you the best of luck, because we know on November 4th, you are going to be a winner again. So thank you
very much. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this.
Oh, thank you.